Welcome to the Bare Naked Shrinks with your hosts Dr. Danny and Dr. Courtney, here to strip down disordered eating and negative body image.
Hello, we'd love to welcome Dr. Erin Parks, clinical psychologist and co-founder and chief clinical officer at Equip. We're so happy to have you, Erin. And before we started recording, we were just talking about how we know each other. So it's another UCSD connection. I forgot, but Erin took over my desk as a postdoc, yeah, when I left?
Correct. Yes, I was off cycle for fellowship because I just had a baby. And I remember I took over your desk and there was like a bone or something in the desk. There was some prank that had been like rotating across desks. That's what I remember from a long time ago.
That's hilarious. I love it. And Courtney, you were still there when Courtney was an intern and postdoc and everything
Yes.
too.
I think we overlapped for maybe 3 years-ish.
Actually, I think it was 2018, so maybe it was like a year and a half.
UC San Diego is like the Kevin Bacon of the eating disorder field. Like people have at some point in time spent at least a week or more there. Yeah.
Hilarious.
Or you know someone, or you're very close to someone. That's not, you don't even need 7 degrees, maybe like 2 degrees.
Yes. Like when I met Dr. Kara Bohan and I'm like, you didn't go to UCSD? She's like, well, no, but I roomed with Danny. And I'm like, well, there you go. There's your UCSD connection.
Exactly. That's too funny. So now let's get into our
cake and crap.
I'll go first. I guess I'll start with crap. I've been really anxious and I don't really know why. Like normally I'm in tune. I mean, I'm an anxious person, but I've just been having a lot of anxiety dreams. Like last night I was going on a trip and missed the flight, like those kind of things, you know, where they're like, you forget something important. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what I'm extra anxious about. And then for Kate, I love Easter and it's like, I love the spring. So I'm excited to do Easter with my kiddos. All right, Courtney.
Okay, so my cake, well, I just got back from Mexico, so I had a week off and was with my family and 2 of my good friends came with me, so that was really fun. So that was my cake, and my crap would be a close friend of mine is kind of going through a hard time right now and been able to support her, but it's just like really hard to see someone that you really care about suffer. So
Erin, how about you?
I think my cake and crap are kind of one and the same right now. I also just got back from vacation, got back 2 days ago. And obviously the vacation was cake, but the crap is just, I'm in my head, like, how do I bring vacation Erin into everyday Erin? And I'm like, I should just like let it be. Like I had vacation and now I'm back at work, but just desire to bring the breeziness and enjoy the everyday and kind of just, I'm beating myself up.
It's a problem. I'm like more anxious and irritable on vacation. I think it's like I think it's like a scarcity mindset, maybe like from when I was young, we traveled, but we did, we drove everywhere. So anytime I go on like an airplane or like an international trip, I put so much pressure on it that I can't fully have fun. I need to work on it.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I think you should go on tons and tons of vacations, exposure, figure it out.
Okay, and then for our activity today, I guess this isn't just a sorority girl activity, but I've only played it when I was in a sorority, so we're going to do 2 truths and a lie. So, Erin, what sorority were you in?
I was in Tri Delta at Northwestern University.
The Tri Delta, okay. And Courtney, you were a Kappa at
University of Washington.
UW, and I was a Pi Phi at University of Oklahoma. And the Tri-Delt house was right across the street, and my roommate was a Tri-Delt.
My other 2 top houses in Rush were Tri-Delt and Pi Phi.
The Kappas cut me on the first day, which is like just a rude move, and they only did it because I probably deserved it. The only girl from my high school that was a Kappa, I wasn't her biggest fan, and she probably wasn't my biggest fan. So she was like, I have power. I'm going to cut you on the first day. Okay, so do you want to start, Courtney?
So I have peed my pants in front of a large group of people. The first time I led mindfulness for DBT, I discussed observing hairy balls in a multifamily group. And one of the first days that I was on a family meal at UCSD, I spilled multiple plates of spaghetti all over the hallways right in front of the director of the adolescent program.
I think they're all true.
I know one of yours is true for sure. So I'll let Erin guess which one is a lie first.
Why? I think they're all true, but I'll go with the peeing yourself in a large crowd is a lie.
I was going to say spaghetti spilling.
It's the spaghetti spilling because that happened like my 3rd year.
So technically they were all truths. Okay. All right. I'll go next. Okay. I have driven through every 48 contiguous state, including Mexico and Canada. I met the serial killer Richard Ramirez visiting my family at San Quentin State Penitentiary. I was bitten by a gator in New Orleans.
I think it's the first one.
I think it's the last one.
Which one do you think is a lie, Courtney?
The state one.
The driving. Okay. And Erin, which one do you think?
The gator, getting bit by a gator.
The gator is the lie. Did you?
There's a story about the prison thing there. I love that both Courtney and I were like, probably true. Never heard it, but probably true.
I know the story, so I know that one is true.
Oh, you do? Shoot, I thought you didn't know that story.
No,
Okay.
I know that one's true. I know that one's true.
But that's hilarious that, yes. I mean, of course, there's sociopathy in my family. Okay, Erin.
Okay. Mine might be a little less entertaining, but let's see here. I had to write them down so that I remember truths and lies. That almost sounds bad. Meeting Lizzo was my sign from the universe to start a quit. I had my son via home birth, and I've written a book.
Home birth is the lie.
I'm going to say home birth too.
So I did have a home birth. My 9.5-pound baby was a home birth. It's so funny because I like to joke that I'm like a weird mix of like super science, like trained in neuropsychology, and then also kind of
Like
granola.
hippie.
And yeah, exactly. Yep. So had him
That's
at home.
amazing.
I've never written a book. I've always wanted to. I always say I'm going to, but I have not yet written a book.
What would your book be on if you wrote one?
I really want to write a book on, well, the one that I'm always like sketching out, like I've got a chapter here and chapter there, is about how to answer the hard questions our kids ask us. So like the loose title in my mind is Mom, Am I Fat? Like how to answer your kids' hard questions.
I'd love that. I want to write a book too. It's either going to be an eating disorder one or it's going to be a memoir, but the memoir will have to be a ghost author because
I want the prison story. The prison story needs to be in both the eating disorder book and the memoir.
Okay.
Did I tell you my like top goal for the year, like intention was to start writing a memoir myself?
I love that.
Yeah,
we could have a writing club. We could get together on Zoom and like make each other sit and write.
Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Okay.
That would be super
happening. All right, Courtney, do you have another one for another round?
I'm really bad at the lies. What's a lie? I mean, so my lies are all whatever. I'm just going to do it. Okay. I scuba dove with sharks in Fiji. I have swam with dolphins in Mexico. And I hiked in Patagonia.
I would say the hiking is the lie because I just associate you with water.
I do too, but that was what makes me want to guess. What was the first one? The dolphins, and then what was the other?
Sharks.
Dove with sharks in Fiji.
I'm going to say the dolphins in Mexico, maybe.
It's the hiking in Patagonia. I was supposed to do it. I had that trip booked and then COVID happened.
Man, you know what I'm thinking right now, Courtney? Like, I am such a good Instagram friend that I know that I haven't seen Patagonia on Instagram.
That's hilarious. That's true. It probably would be on my Instagram.
Well, and I know that you've done so many amazing travels in your life that I was like, what's the most boring of all three of those? And it would be the dolphins in Mexico. Okay, I'll go next. Angelina Jolie once hit on my husband. I met my college-era celebrity crush, Colin Farrell, at a party and confessed to him. I once dated an Abercrombie and Fitch model.
All true.
I'm going to say the Abercrombie and Fitch model.
They're all true, but the dated is like, I went on a few dates and was like, did we kiss? We might have kissed, but I was like kind of seeing Jeffrey still. Hope he's listening to this episode. But yeah, so it's not like we didn't date, but we like went out like twice. So you're technically right, Courtney. Okay. Erin, yep, last one for you.
Okay, last one. I have cats. I have dogs. I have 2 boys.
Well, I know the answer to this one.
I don't, because I know you have 2 boys, but I don't know if you're a cat or a dog person. Oh, it looks like I see a cat sculpture, but no, that's not a cat sculpture.
I think it's a jaguar.
I'm going to say you're a dog person. You're not a cat person.
So I was a never petter because I'm not very good at chores. That's just my Achilles, is doing chores. And I just felt like a pet is chores, right? But last year, we decided that our kids deserved a dog more than I deserved to not have a dog. And so we got our first ever dog. So we have a dog now. So Delia is the cat.
What kind of dog?
He might be around here somewhere. He is a mini Bernie Doodle. So he's like 35 pounds. He's it's called the red and white tuxedo. So he's like kind of a redhead. Ziggy, come here.
Obsessed.
He walked behind the screen when we.
Yeah. Here you come.
Oh, that's funny.
You
I
say
missed
hi.
that.
And then he like loves me the most. And you want to know a fun fact is I don't have to do the chores. So my oldest son and my husband do all the dog chores, and yet he loves me the most. It's amazing.
We love that. Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. How old's your oldest?
13. He's in 8th grade.
Okay. My oldest is now 9, going on like 70. And this is why you have kids. They do chores.
I had a behavioral parent training session today and was talking with the parents about their kids doing chores. They have 3 kids. The oldest is 16. No chores. I was like, we got to change this. No wonder they get away with everything.
A Harvard study that came out, I think last year, showed that the highest predictor of success in children is doing unpaid chores as a kid.
Oh, fascinating.
You can still pay them for certain things, but they need to have a baseline of like we'll pay Wilder to like pick up dog poo or something, but he has to do so many others that are just like, you just do these every single day.
I have a friend who calls it, for her kids, being a good family citizen. And so she like will tell them like, hey, thanks, you cleared the dishes because I had to like run up to a Zoom meeting as soon as the meal ended, but you're being a good family citizen. So
I love it.
That.
I should be a better family citizen, honestly. When I get home, I love sitting on the couch. So now let's get into our educational portion of the day. Mastermind. I hope you love that I gave it a Taylor Swift song, where Erin is going to tell us about being an entrepreneur in the field of eating disorders.
Mastermind.
I was thinking about kind of 3 of my learnings in entrepreneurism. So first, I have found it to be absolutely exhilarating. Just the act of being creative, like you are doing with this podcast, right? Just the idea of trying something new, picking up new skills. I will say entrepreneurialism, hard word to say, is a lot like being in grad school. It reminds me of how you're just constantly learning. And just when you think you figured something out, boom, you're going to a new practicum and you have to learn a whole new thing, right? So that has really surprised me about it. I think something that I've been challenged by, and I see it not just for eating disorders, but for all mental health disorders, is the way in which we, whether it's a payer paying for a service, a provider who's going to refer patients to a service, or just all of us as consumers of mental health, we're all kind of caught in the same traps. And I'm so eager for us to interrogate it more. So here's a couple examples. One is like, if you have a physical health condition, like for me, for instance, on vacation, I broke out head to toe rash, which is kind of normal. It happens on a lot of vacations for me. So maybe, Danny, that's how I deal with my anxiety on vacation. But if I go to a doctor and they give me a cream and my rash doesn't go away, I consider maybe I need a different cream. I also consider maybe I need to go to a different doctor. There's nothing more normal than doing what in the mental health field we call doctor shopping. And oftentimes when we don't get better from a mental health condition, we blame ourselves. I'm too depressed. My PTSD is too strong. My eating disorder will never get better. And then we also see that with treatment providers. There are people who will go back to the same treatment centers again and again and again. And sometimes there is nothing wrong with that. But other times it's like, well, maybe that's not working for you. Would you go and try use the same cream on your rash again and again and again? Or would you go try find something that's a different fit? And then the other thing that I find, there's like a linearity between severity and the type of intervention that you do. So we talk a lot about the different levels of care in eating disorders and then substance use, right? Most people, what do they get? Absolutely no care. But if you're not getting no care, there's a lot of outpatient care where you see someone for an hour every week or every other week. Then there's IOPs and PHPs where all of us have worked before. So you spend maybe 3 hours, 4 hours a day, or maybe 10 hours a day, many days a week. And then all the way up to when people live in residential treatment facilities. And there's such this like one-to-one mentality of like, if you're this sick, you go to this level of care. And if you're this sick, you spend as few of hours in care, as though the mechanism of change is time instead of any of the interventions, right? So the thing that we increase based on severity is time, not a different type of intervention. So I'm just kind of really struck by that and the ways in which it like limits people getting better from their illnesses. And then I think similarly, we think of our recovery. I think we can logically see that recovery isn't linear when we think of anyone else, but when we think of ourselves, we do expect a linear recovery. We'll go from having severe symptoms to moderate to mild. And I think we all know that that isn't the case. I was talking with someone today about how whether it's insurance companies or providers or patients, they expect you to go from severe depression to moderate depression to mild depression to no depression. When think about cancer, you have stage 3 cancer. You don't go from stage 3 to stage 2 to stage 1, right? Like you have stage 3 cancer and you do interventions to try get you into remission. Same thing. You have moderate depression and you do interventions to try get you into remission. And mental health is the only place where we like move people between treatment modalities as they air quotes get better. Like this idea like, well, if they're severe, you send them to residential. And then once it moves to moderate, then you can move them to IOP or PHP. And then once it moves to mild, then you wouldn't ever do that with cancer treatment. You couldn't imagine having stage 3 treatment. And as you got better, well, time for a new oncologist, time for a new treatment center. So those are just things I've been thinking about lately is how we just as a society accept some things about mental health diagnoses, treatments, assumptions, and how we've made such different distinctions in what we expect for our physical health treatments compared to our mental health treatments, even though they affect the same little capsule of skin of mine in the same way. Those are the thoughts that I've been having. So I guess that's just me like waxing, but yeah.
No, I like that analogy a lot. And I mean, an outpatient, I see severe people. We actually just had the private practice SIG discussion where I talked about seeing really severe acute people on an outpatient basis, because sometimes that's either all people want to do or they think their life can handle, which I know Equip also like lets people still live in their life while they're doing treatment. And outpatient is one way to do that. So we do kind of have to figure it out, and meet people where they are. And yeah, I mean, I've seen people who needed to be inpatient from the model that you were describing. And you know what? They still got better. It took longer maybe, but they still got better and they were able to still engage in their life. So I love that. Obviously, we're trained in behavioral sciences. We're not trained in business, which I actually think is a huge disservice to psychologists. That's been the biggest thing I've probably struggled with. I mean, thank goodness I have a business manager who really, really helps me. But bookkeeping and marketing and advertising and everything like that, we don't get taught. And I think that's a real disservice to providers. So how did you bridge that gap? Or maybe do you have business people in your family or how did that come together?
Yes, I think that, and I never would have guessed that I would say this. I think that I won't speak to everything, but from the PhD psychologists on this call and that we know, we are way too humble and we know so much more than we think we know. I've just enjoyed meeting so many different people on this startup journey. And I'm really thinking the way at which we are educated as we get our doctorate really makes us natural entrepreneurs. And you know what I found out is nobody knows how to do both finance and marketing and clinical. Like there's not like a business person out there who knows how to do all these things. What they know how to do is assemble a team, which is something we already know how to do. As multidisciplinary providers, we know how to assemble a team, but also think, when you were a grad student in a lab, when you were a postdoc or writing a grant, like we already know how to assemble a team.
True. It's like,
we know how to
I'm terrible at stats. Like, so you get a team on the paper.
Exactly. And yeah, there's not like somebody who graduates with a degree in business who doesn't need to go hire a marketer or a chief financial officer or a head engineer or a chief clinical officer, right? You need all of the parts regardless of what lens you're coming at it.
So one of the questions that I have for you, Erin, and so my dad's an entrepreneur and like that, I've seen him build his career that way. And I think for me, like I've always been more like risk averse. And so I guess, and my dad's always kind of like pushing me to like try something new and like step outside of my comfort zone. And I'm like, like the stability of having a job as a psychologist at a center is very nice. And so I guess I wonder like, how that was for you going from a place like UCSD, right? Obviously very stable, secure, and then being like, okay, I'm going to jump to this completely new thing. And obviously it's taken off and done amazing, but you didn't know that at the time, right? So what was that like for you to really take such a big turn in your career?
That's a great question, Courtney. And I like to joke that my Zoloft dose must have been just perfect the summer of 2019 because it is very, very uncharacteristic of me. I am a very risk averse person. I'm a very anxious person, always had generalized anxiety disorder. And actually, my husband and I have been together a long time. I should know the exact number, but like the 20-ish years, right? When we met, he was entrepreneurial and we always said, fantastic. I'm going to work for the government my entire life, which we thought was the most stable job. And I'm like, and you go be entrepreneurial. We know we'll always have health insurance. We know we'll have a pension and we'll always have stability and you can do things with high risk. So that had been the plan. I think what happened was I got so excited about the possibility of fulfilling a need. And the need that I saw, admissions was one of the things that I was in charge of at UC San Diego. I had an amazing admissions team. And I'm like kind of obsessed with admissions. Like that's when you're so vulnerable, when you call and say like, can you help me? And you might not call again for 6 years, right? So I have just such a space in my heart for that first moment of asking for help for yourself or your loved one.
And I can imagine you being really, really good at that. Like you are just like such a like charming Southerner. I always see you as Southern.
From Minnesota, but I appreciate that very much. That's a kind thing to say. I absolutely loved it. But one of the hard things was that we were having a lot of success at UC San Diego. And so the program was growing and growing until we couldn't get more space and we couldn't get more staff. And so then instead of the program growing, the wait list started growing. And when the wait list was 1 week or 2 weeks, it was tolerable. And I know that every clinic has experienced this. And I think anybody who's worked in a hospital system has experienced, we need 4 more doctors. And they're like, okay, great. As soon as you need 5 doctors, we'll give you 1 half-time doctor, right? Like that's how staffing often tends to work. And so wait list ends up growing everywhere. And people would find out, I'm not even sure how, my email address, my office number, and then sometimes even my cell phone number. They'd figure out that a friend of a friend knew me and they would call and they'd say, can you please get my child off the wait list? And I am a thin-skinned, highly sensitive person. And that was a really, really hard thing for me to stomach. And I think that really pushed me to like, there has to be a better way. I love with my whole body and spirit UC San Diego. It provided me the best training. I loved every single day of working there. Well, not every day, that's a lie. I loved 85% of the days of working there. The care provided was like second to none, just incredible. And yet it was just unimaginable for me. There were people who traveled from all 50 states to go there. And so there would be families that would come, leaving their other children, leaving their spouses, kids leaving their siblings. And I'm someone who's very, very close with my family. And I'm just like, there has to be another way. And yeah, so I think that's kind of what pushed me, Courtney, is this perfect Zoloft dose plus just like a need and wanted to fulfill it. And Equip started because there was a meeting that we had with the chief medical officers of Aetna, Optum, and Anthem. And we were spending about 4 hours with them and other people too, just talking about the eating disorder treatment landscape. There was like a former CEO from a residential and there were other academics there and we were all just talking. And there was a bathroom break like 2.5 hours in and I went to the bathroom and I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, something's happening. Like electricity is shooting through my body. And he's like, Erin, I need you to just be in the moment. He's like, I know how hard that is for you. I know you want to start thinking about the future and worrying. I need you to just enjoy this. You're having a moment. And I get emotional thinking about it. He gives such good advice. I don't know if there are other people in the other stalls, but yeah, I just knew, and it just became something that carried me through. And everyone at UC San Diego was incredibly wonderful. They said things like, well, it might not work and, please reapply. Maybe you can come back if it doesn't work and maybe it will work. And yeah, and it did. So I will say the leap, and I mean, it can't be all that dissimilar to the first time you all posted publicly on Instagram, for instance. Like that actually was one of the harder days for me, the first time my Instagram went public. Vulnerability is vulnerability, whether it's starting a business, putting yourself out there, trying something new. And like anything else, like once you do it once, then the next day is a little easier and the next day is a little easier.
I realize we didn't really give Equip an introduction. So will you give like your 5-minute spiel of what exactly Equip is, what it does?
I'll try to go less than 5 minutes so that people keep listening. So Equip was started at the end of 2019, in December 2019, to make sure everyone had access to evidence-based treatment. And so a couple keywords there. One is access. That means physical access. So we're a fully virtual treatment center. But another is financial access. So we are in network with almost all commercial insurers, and then a lot of Medicaid insurers here in California, but also in Texas and a few other states. I like to joke, but it's truthful, that I thought I needed one Medicaid contract. Apparently, in order to help everyone with Medicaid, it's like 408 contracts. So we're just working our way through. Some places like California do it county by county, some states do it differently. But right now, 1 out of every 2.7 Americans have access to Equip as an in-network benefit, and their insurance company pays for it for a full year. So what is the insurance company paying for? They pay for you to have a therapists that do individual therapy, family therapy, group therapy, a dietitian. So our dietitians tend to do a lot of either food reintroduction, re-education on nutrition, meal planning, grocery shopping, how to cook, the whole gamut. We have a whole range of medical providers. So this includes physical health providers like pediatricians, adolescent medicine attendings, but also psychiatric providers like psychiatrists and psychiatric nurse practitioners. And then we have mentors. So our peer mentors are people who are in recovery from an eating disorder, and our family mentors are people who have already helped their loved one through recovery, really modeled after the great work at UC San Diego and with the organization Feast. And you have this whole team available to you, and it's unlimited care for an entire year. Unlimited, there's most people who are choosing to stay in their lives, right, and do virtual treatment. They have jobs, or they have schools, or they have soccer practice, they have play rehearsal. And so, usually people tap out. We don't want to overdose people on treatment, but we also know that what we need changes throughout time. So for instance, those first 4 weeks of treatment, it's not uncommon to be like, I need to meet with my family therapist another time. Like, what are we doing this weekend? In the beginning, I remember one of my favorite dietary requests, COVID was going on, and someone's like, hey, dietitian, I need to talk to you on a Friday because we're going to go camping because of COVID. How do I feed my kid 4,000 calories a day while camping? And it's like, great, 15 minutes. Let's get on a call and let's make a grocery shopping list. And then people usually start seeing us a little bit less as they are doing better, but boom, finals week, a breakup, a comorbidity flare up, et cetera. And so then you can step treatment right back up. When we started, we were focused on kids, air quotes. So our youngest was 4, our oldest was 24, but now we serve all ages. The youngest patient we've ever treated is 3. The oldest is 71. And I think that's what makes me most excited. So I'll talk about adults for a second. We have so many people that are 30 and above who've wanted treatment for decades, but never felt like they could get it. We have a lot of men in their 40s who are like, I've always wanted to go to treatment, but it's not appropriate for me to be a bunch of the 20-year-old girls. And also, I need to stay at my job. Finance. There are so many people in finance with eating disorders. I have no idea.
At all.
I have so many of my patients whose parents are in finance. It's a disproportionate amount.
We've just talked with Christina Waringa. The neurobiology makes sense with finance, right? So being detail-oriented, high attention, it makes sense. So I think that's one of the great pleasures of Equip is that we are getting to watch people have treatment who never had treatment before. And then also by being fully virtual, it's a little bit easier to bring in your family. I rely, especially during the early days of Equip, on my family to help me raise my kids because Equip was taking up a lot of time. If we talk about entrepreneurism in the beginning days, and I couldn't get my mom and my sister and my husband and my brother and me all to an appointment at 1:00 on a Tuesday, 20 minutes from here, right? But with Equip, we have so many people that call in, and you really do start building this village that's going to help you set your environment up for pro-health behaviors.
I think it's such a cool model too, that you have so many different providers in the same space, right? I guess it's virtual space, but in the same space. And I think that team approach with so many different providers in one place is so unique. You don't often get that unless you're in a higher level of care, is really cool. And I know that you guys offer also a lot of different groups. People can pick and choose what works for them for their treatment and make it really individualized. And so I think that's also a very unique option for folks. I think it's just such a great company that you've built, and how well you've expanded access in the US is just truly phenomenal.
Thank you for that. Thank you. And
Yeah.
the multidisciplinary care is it was born of so many things. One, it's how we all trained in a higher level of care, because you're right, it's easier to do in a higher level of care. But I also found, I did some private practice on the side. I really struggled without having a dietitian, without having a pediatrician. And I just felt like it was so much easier to do my job. And sometimes we hear that from equip providers who've never worked in a multidisciplinary team. They're like, I don't need to try to do all the different things because I know the family mentor is going to tell them that. And I know the dietitian is going to tell them. And then also selfishly, I am not everyone's cup of tea. I feel like I really like dance that fine line between endearing and annoying. And so I like the multidisciplinary team because every member of a family will like someone, right? They'll connect with someone. And so everyone finds their person.
I love that. That's hilarious.
Totally.
I really relate with like the idea of being on a team. I think that I've been a group practice now, so it's nice because I have a team. But again, it's psychologists and 2 psychiatrists. And I think that like the challenge that I come in with now is most of my patients do work with a dietitian, a pediatrician, a primary care provider outside, but trying to find time to connect with them is challenging, right?
So hard.
Whether it's a long email or phone tag. And like, I just so miss being at UCSD and being able to just run across the hall and be like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Do you have 2 seconds that I can tell you this? And so I think that it's interesting how big of a difference it makes when you're like in the same facility or on the same team to better coordinate that care.
I'm also an eating disorder therapist who knows very little about food, like shockingly little about food. And so having a dietitian down the hall at UC San Diego or here at Equip, and we probably over survey our patients, but one of the questions we ask them once a month is, do you feel like all of your providers are on the same page? And like, that's very, very, very important to us because we all know that eating disorders like to find any cracks, and that tends to really hang out closely with both satisfaction and outcomes.
So speaking of, teams, I lead a group practice and we coordinate with psychiatrists and dietitians. I love in person. I'm an extrovert. I genuinely feel like I have severe ADHD. And so I genuinely feel like I'm a better therapist in person. What do you see as the pros and cons? And I do virtual too, but what do you see as the pros and the cons? Would you ever see a benefit of there being an in-person equip?
It's such a good question. I have extroverted skills, but I think either I'm an extrovert with social anxiety or I'm an introvert with social skills. But I started feeling some concern about my own mental health about only exclusively working through Zoom and not seeing people in person a lot. Yeah, I've been making more of a concern about to see humans. So I think when I think about the benefits and the pros and cons of virtual and in person, I think it's both for the patient, but also for the employee. So I want to kind of start first with the employee. Equipsters are Equip. I'm still just totally humbled that people want to work at a place that Christine and I created. I think we're going to hit our 600th Equipster next week, which just blows my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so
And
cool.
so thank you. And so when we're recruiting people and talking about like, do you think Equip would be right for you? A couple things we say is, one, do you like learning? We do so much training. I think that virtual works really well for training because people learn in different ways at different paces. The second thing we ask is like, do you have support? If you live alone and you don't see people very often, I might encourage you to go work at an in-person job and not a fully virtual job. I also think it's kind of at what stage of your career. I think that's been one of the hard things about the world in general moving to virtual. I benefited so much in my 20s and 30s from working in person, getting mentored. I made my best friends at even today when the first 3 people I call is like from job number 1, job number 2, and job number 3. If you don't yet have that or need that support system, that might be another reason why you might choose an in-person employment over a virtual employment. And then from a treatment standpoint, I would say one, like kind of the busyness of your family and your life, there's virtual does weave it in. We talk to parents who are sitting in the car outside hockey practice and doing their family therapy session or their dietitian session. We see kids at their school nurse who call in from their phone while with the school nurse to get support during lunchtime. You just can bring us with you. And I think that really works if you're kind of on the go a lot. I just so genuinely believe that not everything works for everyone. And we just know that there's people who there's something about connecting with them that being in person that allows them to receive the intervention or establish rapport or feel safe or stop their behaviors. I think for people who we end up stepping about 6% of our patients up to a higher level of care. And it's always in-person care when we do that. And the reasons are usually, while we've been trying to structure their home environment, whether they're a child or an adult, for pro-health behaviors, they need more supervision. They need more eyes on them. Yeah, I think there's a place for both. Will Equip ever be in person? No. I mean, I should never say never, but I'd say never. It sounds really complicated. Having a business with lots of real estate would be my chicken answer to that. But I also have found that it has been, I think, easier to scale quality in a virtual environment because it still feels like one program Equip. Without naming any names, I think we can all think of some places that have multiple centers. And we'd be like, I absolutely love the center in this city, but I wouldn't refer someone to a center in that city.
Exactly.
And it is really hard to scale in-person training where virtual, every Equipster feels like they're part of the same training program. Training obviously is very heavy in the first 6 months of being an Equipster, but people continue to get an hour of training and hour of supervision, whether they've been here for 3 weeks or they've been here for 3 years.
Only 6%? That's fascinating. That's like, I just like small number.
It was smaller than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's pretty given FBT too, but still, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is.
I too am shocked. Yes, thank you. But that does not mean that 94% have 100% full weight restoration and all that. But yeah,
still impressive.
Thank you, Courtney.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Erin. That is so helpful and a great perspective from, the regular clinician and researchers that we tend to have. You have sort of merged all of them together. So it's been really cool to hear your story. And now I would like to hear a little bit more about your personal story.
Interview the expert.
So like I said, I always feel like you're a Southerner, but you said you grew up in Minnesota.
Huh?
So tell me, this is always our first question, tell me about your nuclear family and what it was like growing up. Sounds like you're really close to your dad.
Yes. So I grew up with my mom and my dad and my brother and my sister. I'm the oldest of 3. My brother lives down the street, and I would do anything for my sister to live down the street. She teases me with it every 6 to 9 months, but it hasn't happened yet. So she's just a quick 45-minute flight away. And my mom and dad actually got divorced when I was 31, just like a couple weeks before my first son was born. So now I have a really awesome stepdad and a really awesome stepmom. And both of my parents were in business. So we did grow up, kind of talking about business type things around the table. I would say the most common thing was about how you should never shoplift because my parents were in retail. And so they talked a lot about not shoplifting. That was like the number one thing we talked about. But yeah, we grew up in Minnesota. We moved a lot. So my father was opening new Dayton's stores. So Dayton's became Marshall Field's, became Target. But so we moved between Wisconsin, North Dakota, and Minnesota many times, including we moved 2 weeks before my senior year of high school. And so for senior year, I walked around on the first day with a map because I didn't know where anything was. So obviously there were things that were hard about that, but also I think it's probably one of the reasons my siblings and I are so close.
That's awesome. Okay, so where did you go to undergrad, and at which point did you realize psychology was for you?
So I went to undergrad at Northwestern University in Chicago, where I took 0 classes in psychology. It was funny because it was maybe a year after that I'm like, oh, Dad, I'm going to sign up for this psych class. He's like, you literally just finished school, like never during those. I'm like, I know. So my first job out of college was marketing Broadway shows while they toured. It was 2002. They're like the Enron and all that stuff had just happened. It was a very hard job market. I thought I was going to love this job. I hated the job. I was so fortunate to have wonderful roommates and friends who tolerated how miserable I was that year. And so I decided that I wanted to work in neuropsychology. And so I sent an email to 100 different labs in Washington, D.C. I was moving there for a boy.
100 labs? There are 100 neuropsych labs in DC.
They weren't all neuropsych, but with NIH, there are like 100 PIs, right? So I sent about 100 out. I would say at least 50 didn't get back to me. And then the other 50 were all like, of course you could volunteer here. But there were 2 that were like, we are hiring research assistants and you have the world's like weirdest resume. So like, why do you want to go from marketing Broadway shows to here? And I got hired in this fantastic lab. It was run by a neurologist, but was interested in epilepsy. And it was a true multidisciplinary team approach. There was a surgeon, a neurologist, a social worker, and a neuropsychologist. And so the neuropsychologist would help look at their cognitive functioning, but we also used fMRI to map the brain to find out where language was based. So if they were going to go in and remove the seizure foci, that we wouldn't accidentally take like eloquent cortex that's needed for language. And then the social worker, obviously lots going on if you have a kid having seizures and a kid having brain surgery, right? So yeah, that's where I fell in love with multidisciplinary teams. I went and started taking night classes in psychology. And so that was pivot number 1, from Broadway to neuropsych.
Okay,
And then
I love that.
And then pivot number 2 was after that home birth with Max, I was off cycle for fellowship, and I just called all my grad school friends and I'm like, does anyone know anyone hiring an off-cycle fellow? And they're like, Walt K is at the Eating Disorder Center. And I'm like, why would I want to work there? Because you might remember Jenny left early from her postdoc.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. She moved out to North Carolina. And
Okay.
then I fell into it and got to move into your desk as you moved to LA.
That is so wild. Where did you go to grad school?
UC San Diego in the joint doctoral program.
Okay. So was that when you went, were you a postdoc?
Yes, for postdoc, exactly. So I was in the joint doctoral program, all focused on neuropsychology and the neuropsych track. Went up to San Francisco, UCSF and the San Francisco VA for my internship year. And then ended up in Vegas for a couple of months because Seth was on a work project there, and that's where I gave birth to Max. And then when we moved back to San Diego, and that's when I was looking for a postdoc.
Are you still in San Diego now?
I am, yes. I'm in Carlsbad, just north of the city. I really love Carlsbad. They say Carlsbad is rad, and it is like a sleepy, fun surf town, and it's wonderful. So I always, whenever I can, we obviously travel to see each other at work quite often to get our teams together. And whenever I can, I try to bring the whole team together in Carlsbad because I love showing off this little city.
Yeah, it is. It is very sweet there. And if you had any other career besides being a Broadway marketer, psychologist, a neuropsychologist, and an entrepreneur, what would it be?
If I like went back to freshman year, Erin, I would have been a computer engineer. I didn't know what product was, but now that I know what product is, I really enjoy that. So
What is product? To me, product is something I put on my face. What are we
yeah,
talking
I mean,
about?
likewise, that's what I thought too. So product is saying like, okay, what problem are you trying to solve? Okay, we're trying to solve the problem that, people come to our app and they're only there for 1 minute and they leave. Like they can't find the button to sign up. Okay, so we're going to figure out how to design it in a way that works. Something like eating disorder related is let's see here, something our product team is working on. Scheduling. Nobody likes scheduling. I don't like picking up the phone to schedule, but yet everyone wants to be in charge of their own schedule, right? So our product team is like, okay, what is the way to help make it as easy as possible for a patient to schedule, but also easy for the provider? And so where do the buttons need to go and how does the app need to work? So that's what product does. And then the engineers build it. When I was doing neuroimaging research, I loved that I would spend like 25% of my time with patients. And then I'd spend like 50% of my time analyzing the data, which is really just like writing code. And I found it really, really relaxing. So I think if I'd go back in time, that's what I would have done.
I love it. Okay, so you obviously are a super hard worker, very industrious, very productive. What do you do outside of?
Really am obsessed with my hobbies right now. I had a couple years where I kind of neglected my hobbies, but I just got into tennis in October, and I'd never before played tennis in my whole life. And I started taking lessons. Now I'm on like 2 teams. I'm really into it because it checks every bucket. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm good, but my confidence is much higher than my ability, which I think is just the key to getting through life sometimes. But it's perfect because I'm like, I want to spend more time socializing. I want to spend more time outdoors. I want to spend more time moving my body. And then I also feel like while there is a million things that are wonderful about being a co-founder, I am a very emotive person. And I do feel like I got to pull it together. But at tennis, I can hit really hard. And so I feel like I get to check every single box in just 1 hour.
Are you a tennis grunter? Are you one of those grunters?
I do sometimes make noise because my coach was like guy who gives me lessons sometimes, telling me that he's like, you hold your breath, Erin, like, and you start playing. And so I do. And he's like, so in order to not hold your breath, grunt every time you hit it because it forces you to breathe. So I'm a little bit of a grunter now. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I've always wondered why tennis people grunt. So now I know.
There's a function.
Do you have any other hobbies?
Yes, cross stitch. And I was wondering if I have it handy here. So cross
love
stitch
it.
started. All of us have a former colleague, Dr. Annie Cusack, and Annie had like an important anniversary, and so I cross stitched. It was my first time ever cross stitching, and it said "fresh out of box," but it like looked all traditional. So I really enjoy cross stitching. Yeah, cross stitching really rewards anxiety. It works really well.
I'm a hobby cycler is what I say. Like I have
like that.
so many hobbies and right now I'm really into one, but I don't want to say because I'm making special things for Courtney and Britt and Millie for the conference.
Yes, I'm so curious.
I know, so I don't want to say what it is, but it's been super fun and you'll all get to see it at the conference. So speaking of, Erin, you're definitely going to the conference. Yes.
Okay, good. I was hoping the same. Yes, I'll be in Texas. It'll be a lot of fun.
Amazing. That's only
You
like
should
a little over a month away.
I know.
I'm
I'm
so excited. We have to
so
start making our social plans now. Like I feel like, okay, I got the ticket and the hotel, but now it's time to coordinate.
I was actually just thinking about that. I was like, I want to start reaching out and getting all my plans in a row. And we are going to have a roundtable with the podcast. So we're going to invite certain people. We're going to look at the schedule and see like when an hour will work. And then we're just going to have a bunch
Such
of
a
us
good idea.
hang out and talk. Okay, well, it's been amazing having your expertise here, Dr. Erin. Do you have something for the audience for homework?
Work it, y'all.
Yes, I would say my advice is to do something creative. And I mean, I could say do something creative every day, but don't be too pedantic, but do something creative regularly. And that could be just writing a paragraph. It could be writing a letter to an editor. It could be cross stitching. It could be creating a new group. So, wherever it is that you work, be like, hey, I think it would be great if we had a group that did this, then create the group. I think we act as though being entrepreneurial is just one thing, starting a business. No, it's all the little things that are necessary, and it scratches your creative itch. So I encourage everyone to create something.
I love that. I love that. I wish I would have been creative earlier in life. Like, because we're so taught like science, school, da da da. And I mean, not everyone's family, but particularly my family. And it's like, no, you can be both. You can be
Danny,
creative.
I've always seen you as so creative. I feel like with
Agreed.
fashion, fashion in one way is that you've always expressed yourself creatively.
100%.
Yeah. But I mean, I wasn't always that way though. I was very basic before. You should have seen my grad school apartment decoration. I told the story about my like artist boyfriend coming in and being like, what in the Hobby Lobby hell is going on here? Oh,
I feel like if we were still playing Two Truths and a Lie, the lie is Danny ever saying she was basic. Like, I don't think she was ever basic.
Accurate.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was such a treat. It's always so good to see both of you. And I'm glad I get to see you two in person in a month.
I know. So excited. You're sort of the impetus for us developing this. Remember
really
when I
kind.
met with you and I was like, had that
Yes.
business idea and you were like, just start putting stuff out there.
Yes.
And I love that.
And then she was like, Courtney, do you want to do something? And I was like, sure, why not?
I know.
It makes me so happy.
I
And you had so
instantly
much
just
new
thought
at once, Courtney. The move to Seattle and that, so you've just been in a season of embracing change. I love that.
So stay tuned for our next episode, Changes, where Dr. Caroline Christian of the University of Pittsburgh is going to discuss risk periods for the development of eating disorders. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe.
See y'all next time.